Now, we're going to hear from our legal update from Jim Wood from Mayor Brown.
Thanks, Chris, Joy, Ben, and everyone. And I particularly enjoyed the comments by Shimolik earlier today. We as an industry are confronted with trying to attract younger talent, lifeblood into our industry. I have some personal experience. I tried to steer my son Adam into the insurance industry after a conversation with my buddy Jerry Sullivan. He said, go into broking, get him into broking, then we'll get him into a company, then he can go back into broking where the money's really made. So was the plan. So in Northern California, I set Adam up with Kurt DeGrose at ABD, an old friend, and he interviewed. He was going to be a summer intern in his third year of college. And about 2 weeks later, I get this email back from Kurt. I said, Jim, I did everything I could. I had to scroll down. I see Adam's note to him saying, gee, thanks very much, Mr. DeGrose, but I'm just not interested. So had it all planned for him, but I wasn't ready for that little curve. Many of us are confronting that today. Adam, incidentally, is doing well in the tech world, so let him go and let him do what he's going to do. But it stresses the point that we have to deal with. And fortunately, we have some bright people who are thinking of that. Yesterday at the board meeting, we asked Pam Quillisi to serve in a leadership capacity on our Millennium Committee. We also have locally here, representing the state of California really, is Cal State Fullerton. Wiley Liu runs the School of Risk Management there. If you need young talent, talk to Pam, talk to Wiley. Here you have educated people who are enthusiastic about the insurance sector, so it's an option for you. Now on with the basics. Let's see if we can do this right. What do you know? I'd like to talk about 4 areas today: Trump and insurance. Ben's comment about the EUUS covered agreement, domestic surplus line insurance laws or insurer laws, and also the proposed New York Department of Financial Services cybersecurity requirements. Each of these can affect us. With respect to President Trump and insurance, fortunately, thus far, we haven't been the subject of one of his tweets, and nor have we seen evidence that he's going to focus. Having said that, we do know that there are likely to be changes made in DoddFrank that will affect the Federal Insurance Office. Indeed, Mike McGrath, who had capably run that office since its inception, has resigned. So currently, there's no leader in that section, and I understand there's a high raise that was put on that office, so no one is likely to take over in the short term. So what is likely to happen? Under Dodd-Frank, while the president hasn't been focusing upon insurance, there is a piece of legislation called the Financial Choice Act of 2016, and it is sponsored by Representative Jeb Hensarling, and it could act as a model for what the administration is likely to try to accomplish. In that, we find that there may be a combination of the FIO office and also the Financial Stability Oversight Council. Secondly, we find that there may be a repeal of FSOC's significantly important financial institution designation authority. This affects the very large insurers, requires additional capital, much like the banking sector. And there's been complaint about that. The interesting thing is most of the companies have more or less adapted to it. Nevertheless, that may be eliminated, and they would be much more free to deploy their capital in areas other than reserves. Fortunately, the Choice Act, nor any other acts of which we're aware, are focusing upon the Non-Admitted and Reinsurance Reform Act, the NRRA, which is the part of Dodd-Frank that most directly affects us. and affects us in a positive way. It's worked well, it's helping us, and we don't see any tinkering in that area right now. So as I say, we're kind of like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix. We're dodging bullets and they're going by in slow motion. And so far, nothing's hit us, but we will be vigilant about that. How about the president and California? Well, there are a list of things that are likely to be affected in California. Indeed, the San Francisco Chronicle about 2 weeks ago ran a really poignant list of matters that will be affected likely by the president, what the state's likely to do, what he's likely to ask for, and the likely result. And it includes the environment, immigration, we all know that, it's before the Ninth Circuit right now, education, gun control, transportation, labor rights, and energy. Those are all huge subjects that our state, I like to think of us as the Republic of California, are very interested in. The one insurance area that might be affected is healthcare, with the repeal of the sought-after repeal and replacement of the Affordable Care Act by the administration. Thus far, they found that it's a little bit more difficult to immediately repeal and replace. The current estimates are that it's not going to happen until the end of this year now, rather than immediately. How will it affect California? Well, it may affect California insofar as grants are concerned in connection with the Covered California and Medi-Cal. Likely, we're not going to be able to continue to support, without federal funding, Covered California, which is our portion of the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. Incidentally, a third of Americans do not know, thinks that there is a difference between the ACA and Obamacare. They are one and the same. Also, there may be block grants given to particular states, all states, in order to administer Medi-Cal or their equivalency. And that can be harmful in the future if there's inflationary pressures and the like. So we'll have to see how that plays out. The EU-US covered agreement, has been indicated before, is a new revelation. It's a little history here. We go back over 20 years in trying to refine collateral that will be necessitated by U.S. regulators and applied to EU reinsurers doing business in the United States. From the EU's perspective, and particularly the large worldwide reinsurers, this put them at a competitive disadvantage. And as a result, there was a lot of negotiation over many years. Mike McRaith and the FIO led our point on that in terms of negotiating with the EU. What was attempted to be achieved was an equivalency. That is, if the U.S. regulators were to give relief to posting collateral by reinsurers, then in exchange, U.S. reinsurers doing business in the EU shouldn't have to adhere to certain capital requirements, other local restrictions, and the like. And much of that has been achieved. It remains to be seen if true equivalency is achieved. Some are dubious of that, but it's a work in progress. And frankly, I think it's a step in the right direction. And it also shows evidence that we need an FIO and somebody in the FIO to be the point person to negotiate with foreign governments and regulators. A little bit more on the covered agreement, which I just outlined to you. Let's talk for a moment about domestic surplus line insurer laws. These are somewhat unique and also somewhat new, started in Illinois, and the concept is the following. Any company that wants to set up a surplus line insurer in the United States has to form in effect two insurers, assuming that they also want to do admitted business in a variety of states. And that is one insurer that would be domiciled in a state and operate throughout the United States, and one insurer to be the surplus line insurer that would be domiciled in a particular state, but then not admitted in the other states. That requires extra capitalization and inefficiency and the like. Some states, I think, got bright about this and looked at it, and there are 10 states in all currently, whereby you can capitalize one insurer in that state, and it can serve a dual function. Act as both a surplus line insurer throughout the United States and follow the regiment that we all follow, the declinations and making sure that the admitted market won't take the risk first. And then also operate on an admitted basis throughout the United States. So you see this 10 states here that have enacted that. This is under consideration, at least at the surplus line board level right now, through Hank Haldeman and the Legislative Committee, as to whether or not we want to sponsor a similar opportunity in California. Finally, regarding cyber insurance, every year we talk about this because it is so important. Your integrity is important. You hold almost sacrosanct, personally identifiable information on behalf of your consumers, and it's important that you protect that information. Tellingly, the New York Department of Financial Services has come out with a very important set of proposed regulations, which are likely to become effective April 1 with a phase-in period over approximately 180 days. It's a very thorough, well-conceived set of regulations, and it's the first set of real regulations governing cyber insurance in the insurance industry in the United States. It applies to all licensees in New York State, agents, brokers, insurers, as well as the banks. I happen to think that it's going to set a standard throughout the United States where other states, perhaps even the NAIC ultimately, might follow, and there's much to be studied and gain and learn from that. Among other things, you have to have a chief information security officer either employed or by contract. The board of directors has to take real control over the search situation. There has to be a written information security plan prepared, a data breach response plan prepared. You have to check third-party vendors. All of this has to be done, and annually it must be certified to the state, to the regulator in New York. As a result of that, I think there's going to be some real movement in this area. There are some minor exceptions for the real small players. I'm working with an outfit called, an organization called United Lex. We're trying to design a questionnaire right now that'll be very business practical so that you can go through a checklist ultimately online, decide where your problems are, whether or not you need help in solving those. And I'm working with Ben and his team to, once we get this together, to see if we roll it out here to the membership as an aid to you to help protect this information that you have derived. For those of you who are interested, there are a couple of handouts at the front desk as you leave on the EU covered agreement and also on the DFS regs and cybersecurity in general. Feel free to get those. That's it.
Thank you, Joe.